On August 22, 2017, a missing person report was filed with the Jackson Police Department in Mississippi. The report concerned Tisha Dillard, a 34-year-old part-time school nurse and mother of one. Her husband, Antonio Dillard, 38, an auto mechanic employed at a local repair shop on McDowell Road, was the one who made the report. He stated that Tisha left their home on Lynch Street in Jackson at approximately 4:15 p.m. that day, telling him she planned to visit her mother in Canton, a small town roughly 30 miles north. Antonio explained to investigators that Tisha had taken the family's silver 2010 Ford Fusion and appeared to be in a neutral emotional state. There had been no reported argument between them prior to her departure. When she failed to return home by nightfall, Antonio called Tisha's mother, Beretta Hayes, to check on her arrival. Beretta told him that she had not seen Tisha and was unaware of any planned visit that day. Concern increased overnight, and by 9 a.m. the next morning, Antonio visited the nearest precinct to officially file the report. Officers took the statement and entered the vehicle's license plate number into regional traffic monitoring systems. A search was initiated later that day by Jackson PD in collaboration with nearby jurisdictions. Reviewing interstate traffic camera data, investigators confirmed that the Ford Fusion had entered I-55 northbound shortly after 4:20 p.m. on the day of the disappearance. However, there was no record of the vehicle appearing on any traffic system beyond that point. Weather conditions were clear and there were no immediate reports of vehicular accidents involving that make or model. 2 days later, on the morning of August 24, officers from Hinds County Sheriff's Department received a report from a forestry crew working off Old Yazoo Road. Before we dive deeper, you are watching True Crime Excavate, your portal for gripping explorations into the world of real crime. Here, we dissect chilling cases, delve into unsolved mysteries, and recount tales of scandal and deception. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. They had discovered a burned vehicle in a wooded area approximately 200 yards from the nearest access road. The car's exterior was almost entirely destroyed, but the VIN number etched on the engine block remained legible. A check of the number confirmed the car was registered to Tisha Dillard. Inside the vehicle, forensic investigators located human remains in the driver's seat position. The body was badly charred, rendering visual identification impossible. Also found in the front cabin was a partially burned purse containing a state-issued driver's license in the name of Tisha Dillard. The remains were transported to the Jackson County Coroner's Office for examination. The coroner's team requested DNA analysis to confirm the identity of the deceased. They also began the standard examination of the remains to determine cause and manner of death. Due to the extensive thermal damage to tissue and bone, neither blunt force trauma nor specific internal injuries could be confirmed. Toxicology was not possible. There was no evidence of a collision and no secondary vehicle debris was present at the scene. The tires were intact and road markings showed no signs of skidding or impact. The car's ignition system had been completely destroyed, but investigators noted that the fire did not originate from a ruptured fuel tank, nor were there signs of an explosive accelerant at the immediate scene. However, no fuel canisters or incendiary materials were recovered from the surrounding area. Local authorities concluded that the fire had been intentionally set, but could not determine with certainty the method used. 3 weeks later, DNA results confirmed that the remains found in the vehicle matched the sample previously obtained from Tisha's medical records. With no additional physical evidence and no contradictory witness statements, authorities declared the case a closed missing persons investigation. Tisha Dillard was officially listed as deceased with the cause of death undetermined. The news quickly spread through local media outlets. Coverage remained factual, citing the confirmed identity and details of the vehicle recovery. No speculation was included in official police briefings. Community response was subdued, but the case was widely discussed within Jackson's medical and church circles, where Tisha had been known for her volunteer work and attendance at a South Jackson congregation. Antonio Dillard cooperated fully with law enforcement. He provided consent for a search of their residence and submitted phone records for review. No suspicious activity or inconsistent statements were noted by investigators during the process. The couple had one child, Serenity Dillard, who was 8 years old at the time. In early September 2017, a funeral was held for Tisha Dillard at a small Baptist church in South Jackson. The service was closed casket due to the condition of the remains. Attendants included Tisha's co-workers from Boyd Elementary School, members of the local congregation the Dillards had attended for several years, and several of Antonio Dillard's colleagues from the automotive repair shop where he worked. The tone of the gathering was quiet and restrained. The couple's daughter, Serenity Dillard, who had turned 9 shortly before her mother's disappearance, was placed under the care of a licensed trauma counselor specializing in child grief recovery. The sessions began less than 2 weeks after the funeral and continued on a weekly basis through the fall. School officials at Mac Willie Elementary, where Serenity was enrolled, were notified and given clearance to coordinate with the therapist as needed. On October 12, 2017, a life insurance claim filed by Antonio Dillard was approved and paid out in full. The policy issued in 2013 had a benefit amount of $250,000, naming Antonio as the sole beneficiary. No delay occurred in the processing of the claim as the death had been officially certified by the Jackson County Coroner's Office and supported by DNA confirmation. A representative from the insurance provider based in Biloxi later confirmed that no red flags or irregularities were found during the review. Antonio used a portion of the insurance payout to settle the remaining mortgage balance on their Jackson home. Another portion went toward legal fees and mental health services for Serenity. Approximately $50,000 was placed in a custodial 529 savings plan for her future college expenses. Financial records from this period show no unusual activity, and investigators would later confirm that none of the transactions raised suspicion during subsequent audits. In January 2018, roughly 5 months after the discovery of the burned vehicle, Antonio and Serenity relocated to Houston, Texas. He took a position at a commercial auto repair facility located in the western suburbs near the Katy Freeway. His employment was verified through HR records, and neighbors in the apartment complex where they initially moved described Antonio as quiet and private, rarely seen outside of work hours except when taking his daughter to and from school or local parks. Public records show that Antonio registered Serenity in a local elementary school within 2 weeks of arriving in Houston. There were no court filings regarding custody disputes, relocation objections, or outstanding claims against the Dillard family during this time. Despite the case being officially closed by the Jackson Police Department in November 2017, Antonio later admitted during questioning that he had privately harbored doubts about certain elements of the investigation. He cited the lack of a clear crash scene, the absence of witness sightings after the vehicle entered I-55, and the highly deteriorated state of the remains, which made it difficult for him to reconcile the death with what he knew of his wife's habits and behavior. However, he did not raise these concerns with law enforcement at the time, stating later that he did not believe there was anything he could do to change the outcome. In the months following the funeral, there was minimal media attention on the case. Local coverage had ended once the identity of the remains was confirmed, and no further reporting was conducted by regional outlets. The investigation files remained inactive with no new leads submitted by the public and no follow-up action required by the coroner or detectives assigned to the case. The Jackson Police Department classified the matter as a suspicious death with no evidence of foul play. The case was archived under standard procedures and no homicide designation was ever made. The final summary noted the fire damage, the positive DNA identification, and the absence of contradicting forensic findings. With no suspects, no additional remains, and no unresolved financial motives, the file was closed without further recommendation for review. The Dillard family's relocation marked the end of the case's presence in Mississippi's active files. For the next 2 years, no legal or investigative action occurred related to Tisha's disappearance. No additional evidence surfaced and no other persons came forward with claims that contradicted the official narrative. Internally, law enforcement and forensic personnel considered the case complete. The autopsy report, fire analysis, and police interviews were all reviewed by supervisors at the time, and no procedural concerns were raised. In April 2020, nearly 3 years after Tisha Dillard had been declared dead, an image appeared on social media that would challenge the official version of events. Lamont Greer, cousin of Antonio Dillard, was browsing Instagram when he came across a photo posted by a New Orleans dance studio. The post showed a group of adult dancers posing after what appeared to be a rehearsal. One of the women in the image was tagged as Kesha Green. The woman's facial structure, skin tone, and hairline were strikingly familiar to Lamont. More notably, she appeared to have a small distinct birthmark under her left eye. The same distinguishing feature once noted in Tisha Dillard's missing persons file and listed on her driver's license. Lamont took a screenshot and sent it to Antonio without comment. Initially, Antonio dismissed the similarity as coincidental, but over the following days, he began reviewing the dance studio's public posts. Multiple photos and short videos had been uploaded over a 2-year span. In each, the woman tagged as Kesha Green appeared consistently. Same face, same voice and background audio, same posture and gait as Antonio remembered from his wife. The resemblance became difficult to ignore. Antonio created a secondary Instagram account under an alias and followed the dance studio's page. He began collecting images, cataloging them by upload date, and comparing visible details such as tattoos, jewelry, and body language to old family photos of Tisha. He found no clear indicators to disprove the possibility that it was her. He also noted that the woman had no references to family, children, or personal history in her account activity. In early May 2020, Antonio hired a private investigator, Daryl Mlin, based in Baton Rouge. Mlin was a licensed PI with prior experience in civil fraud cases, missing persons, and spousal surveillance. He was briefed on the background of the case and given access to photos and documentation for comparative reference. Mlin traveled to New Orleans within a week and began routine field surveillance. Further inquiry revealed that Maurice Shepard, 41 years old, had a documented criminal history in both Louisiana and Mississippi. His prior convictions included insurance fraud, 2011, and document forgery, 2014. He had served time in a state correctional facility and was released in 2016. No current warrants were active in his name at the time of surveillance. Mlin obtained a discarded coffee cup from a trash bin outside the woman's regular coffee shop. The item was collected using gloves and stored under standard chain of custody protocols. Mlin then contacted a former colleague with access to state-level DMV records in Mississippi and submitted the fingerprint for comparison. Within 4 business days, the result came back. The fingerprint taken from the cub matched the biometric data on file for Tisha Dillard recorded during a 2015 driver's license renewal in Hinds County. Despite being officially declared deceased, her fingerprint remained in the Mississippi Department of Public Safety database. The match was verified at a 100% confidence level. Mlin informed Antonio Dillard of the finding and provided a full report including photos, surveillance logs, and the fingerprint confirmation. Antonio in turn contacted legal counsel in Houston and began the process of submitting the materials to the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. The report submitted by Mlin marked the first substantial lead in the case since 2017. It directly contradicted the previous conclusion that Tisha Dillard had died in a vehicle fire and presented documented evidence that she was alive using a false identity and residing in another state. The Bureau of Investigation initiated a preliminary review. Within 10 days, a joint task force was formed with cooperation from Louisiana State Police. Surveillance operations were extended and a sealed indictment was requested from Hinds County prosecutors. At the time of these findings, Tisha, under the alias Kesha Green, continued working without interruption. Records later showed that she had used falsified documents to obtain employment, including a fabricated nursing credential and a forged Louisiana state ID. In June 2020, following the submission of Daryl Mlin's investigative report, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, MBI, formally reopened the case of Tisha Dillard. The report contains surveillance documentation, biometric verification, and a timeline that clearly placed Tisha living under the alias Kesha Green in New Orleans, Louisiana. The findings were evaluated by senior agents in the MBI's financial crimes and cold case units. Coordination with Louisiana State Police began within days. On June 18, 2020, the Hinds County District Attorney's Office issued a sealed indictment. The charges included insurance fraud, identity theft, and obstruction of justice. A warrant was obtained for the arrest of Tisha Dillard, and efforts were made to confirm her location without alerting her or her known associate, Maurice Shepard. Concurrent with the legal preparations, investigators conducted a thorough financial audit of Tisha Dillard's known activity in the 12 months leading up to her reported disappearance. The audit revealed that she had accumulated over $80,000 in unsecured personal debt across multiple credit cards, private loans, and retail financing plans. Several of these accounts had been sent to collections. Antonio Dillard, her husband, had not been listed as a cosigner or secondary user on any of the accounts and stated under oath that he had no knowledge of the financial issues at the time. Bank records also showed that a rental property located in South Jackson, which Tisha had inherited from an aunt in 2012, was under foreclosure proceedings as early as June 2017. Notices had been mailed to a P.O. box that Antonio did not have access to, and payment delinquencies had exceeded 180 days at the time of her disappearance. Investigators reviewed Tisha's phone activity from the weeks before the incident. Cell tower data from August 22, 2017 placed her phone within 1 mile of Old Yazoo Road between 5:45 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. approximately 2 hours before a burned vehicle matching her Ford Fusion was reported. This location was consistent with the site where her vehicle and the unidentified remains were discovered. Maurice Shepard's phone also pinged the same cell tower during that window, confirming his presence in the vicinity. His call record showed no outgoing communication during that time period and his phone was turned off shortly after 6:30 p.m. It remained inactive for several hours. Law enforcement reviewed missing persons reports and medical examiner files from the Jackson area, focusing on the possible identity of the woman whose remains were found in the burned vehicle. Based on stature, dental records, and DNA fragments, authorities concluded the remains did not match Tisha Dillard's known characteristics. Despite the initial assumption, forensic anthropologists estimated the victim was a woman between 30 and 50 years old, likely African-American, of average build. There were no signs of external trauma beyond fire damage. Investigators believe the victim may have been a transient individual who frequented the Metro Center bus terminal in Jackson, located roughly 4 miles from the vehicle recovery site. No matching identity has been confirmed to date, and she remains listed as Jane Doe 61 to 2017. Tisha maintained this false identity for over 2 years without detection. She leased a duplex, opened utility accounts, filed taxes, and received healthcare services under the name Kesha Green. Her social media presence was limited, and she made no public references to family members, prior residences, or her life in Mississippi. According to witness interviews conducted later, she identified herself only as a native of Baton Rouge who had relocated to New Orleans in late 2017. None of her co-workers at the hospice center were aware of any prior identity. Authorities made the decision to proceed with the arrest discreetly to avoid public attention or flight risk. On July 3, 2020, a joint team of Louisiana State Police and MBI agents located Tisha outside her place of employment on North Robertson Street. She was approached shortly after 5 p.m., taken into custody without resistance, and transported to the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. The arrest was executed under sealed documents, and no charges were initially disclosed to the public. Within 72 hours, Tisha was extradited to Hinds County, Mississippi. She was booked at the Raymond Detention Center and placed under a no-bail hold pending arraignment. The charges included insurance fraud, identity theft, abuse of a corpse, filing a false police report, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. In August 2020, Tisha Dillard was formally arraigned in Hinds County District Court. She faced multiple felony charges following her arrest and extradition from Louisiana in early July. The court denied bail based on her prior use of a false identity, the nature of the charges, and the potential for continued flight. She was remanded to custody at the Hinds County Detention Center. The charges filed against Dillard included first-degree insurance fraud, identity theft, abuse of a corpse, filing a false police report, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Prosecutors also indicated their intention to pursue restitution for the full value of the life insurance payout issued in 2017. As part of the post-arrest process, Tisha Dillard was interviewed by state investigators. The recorded interview was later entered into court proceedings as a voluntary statement. In the video, she admitted that the 2017 vehicle fire had been staged to create the appearance of her death. She cited overwhelming financial pressure as the primary motivation. When asked about the identity of the body found in the vehicle, Dillard stated that she did not know the woman's name and claimed she had not been directly involved in the act of placing the body inside the car. Days after Dillard's arraignment, Maurice Shepard was arrested in New Orleans by Louisiana State Police in coordination with federal agents from the Department of Homeland Security. He was transported to Mississippi under a sealed transfer order. Upon his arrest, Shepard declined to provide a statement. He invoked his right to remain silent and retain counsel within 48 hours of his booking. Prosecutors reviewed Shepard's digital footprint and financial activity between March and September 2017. A court-authorized forensic analysis of his email accounts uncovered deleted correspondence that investigators were able to partially recover. Among the findings was a thread dated July 2017 that included the phrased burner body and a discussion of vehicle ownership records, insurance payout protocols, and document templates for creating a new identity. Though the messages did not mention Tisha Dillard by name, the timing and content were consistent with the sequence of events later revealed through witness interviews and forensic evidence. The trial commenced in January 2021. It was held in open court under standard criminal procedure with jury selection completed within 2 days. Opening arguments laid out the prosecution's theory of the case, presenting a clear and methodical timeline from August 22, 2017 through Tisha's arrest in July 2020. Forensic photographs, financial records, fingerprint comparisons, and digital communication logs were all introduced into evidence. The defense did not dispute the central facts of the case. Instead, they argued that Tisha had acted under extreme psychological distress. Psychiatric evaluations submitted to the court indicated that she had been diagnosed with major depressive disorder in 2016 and had stopped attending therapy sessions several months before her disappearance. A defense-hired psychologist testified that her mental state may have impaired her ability to assess the consequences of her actions. The defense also sought to distance Tisha from the handling of the body found in the car. Their position was that she had fled Jackson with Maurice and was not present when the vehicle was set on fire. They asserted that Maurice had independently arranged for the remains and orchestrated the destruction of the vehicle using Tisha's car and personal items to mislead investigators. However, prosecutors countered this by referencing Tisha's own statement where she acknowledged planning the scheme and being aware of the false identity created for herself. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. Tisha Dillard was found guilty on all counts. The verdict was read in open court. No outburst occurred from the defendant or her representatives. Sentencing was scheduled for March 2021. The trial concluded without a plea deal. The court moved to schedule Shepard's case as a separate matter pending further discovery. Maurice Shepard entered a plea agreement prior to trial. Under the terms of the deal, he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit insurance fraud and document forgery. In exchange for the plea, more serious charges, including abuse of a corpse and obstruction, were dropped. He was sentenced to 11 years in state custody. He is currently serving his sentence at Ella Hunt Correctional Center in Louisiana under a transfer arrangement with Mississippi. He did not testify in the Dillard trial and did not issue a statement following sentencing. Additional investigations into Shepard's previous activities remain ongoing. Financial crime units in Louisiana have reopened 2 insurance-related cases from 2015 and 2016 in which Shepard is listed as a person of interest. As of early 2025, no new indictments have been issued, but the inquiries remain active. Antonio Dillard was not charged with any crime. Following a review of phone records, bank statements, and testimony from multiple witnesses, the court determined that he had no knowledge of the staged death. Law enforcement found no communication between Antonio and Maurice Shepard and no evidence of involvement in the preparation or execution of the insurance fraud. As the named beneficiary of the life insurance policy and in the absence of malice or complicity, he retained the $250,000 payout. In a brief televised statement recorded outside the courthouse, Antonio said, "I buried someone they told me was my wife. I didn't know I buried a stranger." The statement received limited local coverage and was not followed by additional interviews or media appearances. Since relocating to Houston in 2018, Antonio has maintained a low public profile. Public records indicate that he remains employed in the automotive industry and has continued raising his daughter as a single parent. Serenity Dillard, now 14 years old, petitioned the Harris County Family Court to legally change her last name in mid-2021. The request was granted with Antonio's consent. No further information about her has been released publicly, and records regarding her education and custody are sealed due to her minor status. The identity of the woman whose remains were found in the burned vehicle off Old Yazoo Road remains unresolved. Forensic testing has confirmed that the remains do not belong to Tisha Dillard, but no conclusive match has been made through DNA, dental, or fingerprint databases. Investigators continue to operate under the theory that the victim was a transient woman, possibly homeless, who frequented the Metro Center bus terminal in Jackson. Despite a review of more than 30 missing persons reports from the region, none has matched the physical characteristics of the unidentified individual. The woman is currently listed in official police records as Jane Doe 61 to 2017. A file remains open with the Jackson Police Department's Cold Case Unit. The State Crime Lab retains skeletal and mitochondrial DNA samples in the event of future comparisons. No arrests or charges have been filed related to the woman's death, and the circumstances of how she came into contact with Tisha Dillard and Maurice Shepard remain unknown.